My life wasn't always as it is today. In fact, I spent many years partying, drinking alcohol, and using drugs trying to find happiness. I ruined so many relationships and hurt so many people. I mean, there's probably someone within 10 feet of you right now who could tell you all about the awful things I've done. I remember after I turned 21 telling myself I was a good person. I'd quit doing drugs, had a career, only drank alcohol like everyone else. People around me would support me and tell me, "Nate, you're a good person. You're not doing anything anyone else your age isn't doing." But in my heart, I knew this wasn't true. I knew I wasn't a good person. I'd ask myself every day, why is everything I'm doing failing and bringing me shame? Why do I feel so empty inside? It seemed like the more I pursued the partying, boozing, and things I thought I wanted, the further it drove me away from the things I really desired in life. All I could see in my future was a lonely, sick, sad old man. There was no joy, no happiness, no family, no wife. Something inside of me wanted to change, but I couldn't do it on my own. Every day, more and more guilt was felt. Every day, I was further and further from the person I wanted to be.
Anybody who knows me really well probably just listened to Nate's story and thought to themselves, wow, it's pretty crazy that these two people ended up together. I think that myself a lot of times too, actually, because Nate and I's backgrounds couldn't be more different. Basically, if you looked up the phrase goody two-shoes in the dictionary, you would probably find my name written right there. I never got a detention, never watched a PG-13 movie until I was 13, never got anything less than an A in school, participated in every club, and supposedly, according to my mother, set my own curfew throughout high school. I grew up going to Sunday school every Sunday and essentially just was always trying to do the very best thing so that everybody would think that I was the coolest, most perfect person in the entire world. I typically did this though through putting others down and being very impatient and judgmental on the inside. I was super concerned with how I appeared to others on the outside, but not necessarily as concerned with the person that I was when no one was looking anymore.
When all felt lost, my friend and best man, Garrett, showed me that I didn't have to continue to suffer every day. I could feel joy, have hope in a future that wasn't marred by guilt and shame, that partying, relationships, and sex isn't where life was found, that I had been searching in all the wrong places. I could see the proof in his life. He had this joy shining off of him like something I'd never seen before. And I just felt in my heart, I want that. He shared with me the secret to how his life had changed and where his joy came from. This secret changed my life and brought me more joy and freedom than any one thing in this world ever could have. This secret was that Jesus Christ died on the cross for my sins, and through him, I never had to make up for the shame and guilt of my past. That I could be made brand new. That if I believed in him, I didn't just have a future in life filled with a purpose, but a hope in knowing where I was going after I died. That being a Christian didn't mean that God expected me to be perfect and without sin. That he wanted me to admit that I was broken and there was no other way than through putting my faith in him. My life was forever changed from that moment. The shackles of sin, regret, shame, and sorrow broken. I was free and I had a lasting joy, not just that temporary happiness that wears off. He surrounded me with people who loved me and cared about my life. He brought me this wonderful woman today, who I get to call my wife. Through Jesus, I was made into a brand new Nate.
Everything changed for me when I was a freshman in college and I was watching my father battle with cancer in the hospital. He was dying, yet somehow just had this light and joy about him that I envied. I very clearly remember complaining for weeks to my friends at college that I had to spend my Thanksgiving in the hospital rather than at home watching TV on my couch for a week. However, even though my dad was the one who was sick, he spent his Thanksgiving in the hospital reading his Bible, praying, and really trying to love on those around him. I remember standing there and being jealous of him for having as much joy as he did, even in the face of so much suffering. After losing my father, life changed for me. I had recognized that my dad had actually had a relationship with Christ, one that changed him and brought him a joy that couldn't just come from showing up to church once a week. Because Jesus loved my dad and had died for him, my father desired to have a relationship with Christ and to live his life with joy and thankfulness because he got to go to heaven and worship God forever. I realized that I'd been lacking that joy that my dad had and soon began actually living my life for Christ. For me, this meant recognizing that all I'd been doing was trying to make my outside look nice and shiny and perfect, but on the inside, I was just as sinful and miserable as anybody else. I began to actually learn to accept God's grace and to pray and to read my Bible, not because I had to, but because I wanted to have a relationship with God and to know Him and to serve Him with the same wholehearted joy that my dad had had. It was on this path of learning to follow after Jesus that I happened to run into Nate. About a year and a half ago, I remember all my friends talking about this guy named Nate who had just started attending church, but who seemed to have such a passion for following Christ and for loving others. I remember being really frustrated with him actually when we were in groups together because he was somehow managing to be better at being the center of attention than me, and he was better at loving other people than me. Obviously, I'm still an imperfect person. I thought Nate was cute and great and nice, so obviously I avoided him like an embarrassed middle schooler. However, from afar, I felt his life start to challenge me to continue to grow in my faith, to continue to share my faith with others, and to continue to love others with the selflessness with which Jesus had loved me. And then, man, was I ever thankful and blown away by God's goodness when last summer it turned out that Nate actually liked me too.
Lindsey and I are here today because we both decided to put our faith in Jesus Christ.
And we hope more than anything that if you don't know Jesus or you aren't certain where you're going to go after you die, that you don't wait any longer and that you make today the day that you choose Jesus Christ.
We thank you so much for coming and celebrating today with us. We love you all. Thanks again.